Welcome, everybody, to the Talk Your Soul podcast, episode 23. I am DA. That man holding that nice mug right there is my brother from another, Sabir. Welcome, brother.
What's up, brother? What's a guan? What's a guan?
Let me say it in words that you can see scrolling across the bottom there is, you know, I don't know if we could technically call it a sponsor at this point. We'll just say, never mind. Anyway, visit W. Get yourself some energy drinks. 10% off
W,
on
no
them.
doubt. No W, no doubt. A lot going on in
So,
the world. Go ahead.
so as I told you off camera, I wanted to revisit the conversation that we were having a little earlier
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
the video that I sent you of the episode of Family Feud where the question was asked who is the greatest rapper of all time. And for those who may not know what I'm talking about, just go Google that. It's quite entertaining, but it's actually
Family
quite
Feud.
educational as well. And so I wanted to bring it here on camera so that we could get our thoughts out officially. If you notice the caption in the video, it said like who they ask. So my official response to that is they had to ask West Coast millennials, just based on the scope of the responses and where they actually placed on the survey. But
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that the fact that they had Snoop Dogg in the number one spot just kind of proves my point. But
Yeah, in what world, right? Speaking of the world, in what world, and the greatest rapper of all time is a conversation that we have in the culture all the time. It's a conversation that, in my opinion, has changed over the 50 years of hip hop because of the evolution of hip hop. With that being said, like, in what world is Snoop Dogg the number one rapper or the greatest rapper of all time? You know what I mean? Again,
in this
and I
world,
and
apparently,
well then I mean, yeah, like I'm just saying, like again, like who are you? You know, and other people on the list were also old. They were all X generation rappers.
which kind of brings me to what I wanted to ask you. Like, is hip hop gone down that much where like none of these people can elevate to ever be the greatest of all time? Like this, we have officially like put a cap on it. I'm just asking. I'm just asking.
No, that's all right. Yeah. So first of all, back to Snoop being like in the Family Feud scenario of the clip, and we send each other a lot of clips all the time. You know, I mean, you guys should know that like we're always sending each other like stuff on. You know, so like one of the many was a clip of Steve Harvey family feuding. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And they're asking the contestants, and they're guessing. You know, who's the best? You know, who's the best, greatest rapper of all time? And so like we surveyed 100 people, so you have to think like, all right, what 100 people did they talk to like come up with that list? So they're probably X generation middle Americans that came up with those answers. Yeah, like I would say like big Midwest, like like
I think
those,
they
you know.
literally just stepped outside of the studio building and just asked random people on the street as they pass by.
I
Like,
would hope their process is random. As a research mind, I would hope when they do these surveys for this television program that is old as time, that they would have some kind of process that would make it. But you could tell sometimes with some of the answers that like, yeah, like there's a spin on it. There's like a, there's something there. You know what I mean? I think this was a perfect example of that. Like, yeah, like because in no world is Snoop Dogg the greatest rapper of all time. And to your point in our discussion, I don't think he would even say that. You know what I mean?
no, I don't think they would either.
He's I respect him always for his longevity in the game. You know what I mean? He's my age. You know what I mean? And he represented our country at the Olympics. Like his level, the fact that he's still relevant and he started off rapping like, 30 years ago, like is remarkable. You know what I mean? And he should definitely be a top 15 to your other, like where do I bring him into a list? Like I definitely without thinking, of like, but using a good criteria like AI, for example, like, the criteria that we use, like, I think that, you know, he's on a list because of his impact up to the culture. And I just saw him perform at the BET Awards, you know what I mean? And when he did fuck the mother niggas, like all the niggas appreciated that shit. You know, like like all the niggas in the audience like appreciated when he did that shit. Like, like that was for us. You know what I mean? Like that was that shit. You know what I mean? So yeah, like, but like, lyrically, he can still rap and all that shit. Like he's top 15. And it's always changing. And to your question, yes, the J. Cole's, the Kendricks, the Drakes, they can get onto this list, and they
I
have
don't know about Drake. I don't care what nobody say, but that's a conversation for another day. But since we are on the subject of hip hop, what I definitely want to talk about is whatever the fuck Jim Jones is on. Because this motherfucker here is bugging right now. He is bugging.
like live. He's bugging live. Whoops.
Yes, in real time. Bugging the fuck out. Like, now, what I want to specifically mention is,
We should tell people what you're talking about.
yeah, I'm about to, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I'm specifically referring to a podcast that I watched, Fat Joe and Jada. They had Jim Jones on as a guest. And the conversation somehow got to the idea that folks compare Jim Jones to Nas somehow. And then
he was on a podcast.
Yeah,
he was talking to Shannon.
No, I mean, okay, but he was on this particular podcast having this conversation with them two.
Yeah.
It was brought up again. And so where I'm saying that he's bugging is he starts to like go off on this little rant about checking Billboard entries and fucking, like top selling albums and he's basically like trying to put like numbers up against Nas. Like, where do you come off with the audacity to even do that, first of all? And he got fact checked in the comments because someone actually did. It just pointed out the despairing difference between them two. It's like, but I don't know if he's just, doing this for like social media attention or whatever, but
in your words, explain the differences between the two.
One is just much better. I mean, I wasn't even trying to compare him, which is the point. But I'm just saying, like, he feels like it seems like he feels he can measure up. But to try to answer your question, I don't really think you can because, we're talking about a certified legend as to someone who just, I don't know, like.
Well, I'll let me take a stab at it. I feel that like the criteria that traditional hip hop heads give to rap greatness is the actual lyrical skill of rapping. You know what I mean? Like that skill and not how many albums you sold. And I think that's what we saw, you know, as we were told to turn our TVs off with Kendrick and Drake, and that, yeah, Drake has sold a lot of records, like broken records, selling, streaming up, but like Kendrick crushed all that after this beef, and up to
Yeah,
that
but
point,
that ain't ever going to happen between Jim Jones and Nas, though. Like, I don't think there is a time, if they even did a versus, like, it would just not. It's just not going to ever work out in Jim Jones' favor to match up against Nas.
yeah, I agree.
think
He's not. He's lyrically, you know, he's like, it's not even a conversation. Like, again, in my opinion, of, you know, that Nas is a tiers above him with the skill of rapping. But I'm not gonna take away from balling, and
I'm not trying to take away from anything the man does. Now, if we talking about
like
now, I think
he was trying to like talk his shit, and he was just like, you know what, like, you know, numbers
but
don't lie, and like I want to talk about my numbers.
yeah, but that was the point. Like, you can only make a statement like that when your numbers are better than the person you're talking about, and they're not.
Fact.
Like, see,
So
that's what
yeah,
I'm saying. Like, he was saying nothing that was working for him. Now, I will say this, to lend more context to this. I think the conversation that they were trying to have was about relevance. Now, I will give him that, but that's only because at this point, you can almost say Nas is retired. And
right.
Jim Jones is still trying to be a rapper.
And that's the point, is that, you know, very recently, you know, his last viral hit prior to this incident was the statement that he's the oldest young nigga.
Yes.
You know, so like, so he
that should
takes
tell you
pride.
all you need to know about this dude. That statement right there.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, like that was, you know, so he was just enjoying, you know, some viral, and, you know, yeah, like that, like I'm still relevant to the culture, you know what I mean, type moment, I guess, you know, if I'm just trying to put vanity on it. And yeah, like, so like then this comes and he's like, you know, so I think he was already high, like his, you know, he was a little, you know, he got set up. He was set up. But yeah, like, we got to watch out for rappers having midlife crises. This is what we
You
have
know
to watch
another
out
thing that I
for.
was surprised to learn?
We have to watch out for Will Smith. We have to watch out for, you know,
We
DJs
not,
having
you know
midlife
what? I'm
crises.
gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna just let Will be Will, because I mean, hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. I don't know how to.
I saw
You know
his
what I
son the
mean?
other day. Like, he looks interesting always.
Did you hear the comments Jackie Chan made about him?
I did not.
Basically, yeah, he was. I guess he was being asked about why he didn't contact Jaden Smith to reprise his role for the next thing, and basically, and I'm gonna be honest with you, this is probably just some dude on social media's opinion, but it made sense to me at the time. And basically, he was saying that Jaden did like 3 things that Jackie Chan just couldn't really respect. But the main one, because I don't want to get too much into it, but the main one was that he didn't keep up with his training. Because I remember I had told you before, like, he had to actually learn the martial arts for that role when he did the movie.
Yeah.
And, you know,
And how
how the
new guy was eons past him with his actual karate skill in the
yeah,
newest.
did you see when you did the 1-inch punch? I was like, yo, That right there, that's gangster. I've always admired the ones that could do that. There's just something about that.
Let's give the people some shit to watch real quick. You said The Accountant. I was talking about the new Predator, animated Predator on the Hulu. You seen anything new recently that you like?
Be honest with you, no. No, I've just been on YouTube a lot lately. That's pretty much just what I do. By the time I get off, it's really not much. And
Yeah, YouTube is
I'm still not at
everybody's
the
friend.
point. Yeah, I'm still not at the point where I'm going to be buying or renting the movies and shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Until
It
then,
just it is what it is.
until
But I
then,
can't.
just use all the pirated stuff that we get into.
I mean, I don't know. I can't even really think of anything that really has my attention right now. Just from, I'm gonna check out what you said though. This Predator joint, especially since it's animated.
Yeah, I was struggling to get into Andor, and which was ironic because the Force has always been strong with me. And my theory was that like the Star Wars product has just become so diluted now from its original prowess that it's hard for ex-generationers to, get excited about some of the current Star Wars stuff. You know what I mean? Which, and this is my advice to all the producers, like with these spin-off series, like stick with the lightsabers. Like stick with the lightsabers. You know what I mean? That's where the magic is with the Force. You know what I mean? Like
It is true.
there's a lot of forces going on out here, y'all. I mean, there's the force of media. There's the force of politics. There's the force of, trauma. There's so many forces. There's the force of religion. There's the force of no religion. Like
What are you
the
talking
forces,
about?
I've done a deep dive on forces in our life that we need to be aware of. You know what I mean? Like walking through, like I asked ChatGPT to, look at all the forces that we face and, from our past, from our
Wait,
current
so before you even
world.
continue, let me ask, what was the actual prompt that you put into ChatGPT for this? Because I want to hear the words that you actually used, because it's important.
Okay. Full disclosure, I'm going to have to see. Okay, here we go. It saved it. This was last week. To ChatGPT. And full disclosure, when you ask ChatGPT something because it's a novel idea, it uses 10 times the amount of energy if you ask Google the same question. I have been in deep thought about the concept of the Force, famous from Star Wars. What are some metaphorical forces that the human condition contends with in physical and emotional development? And what actual societal and metaphysical and mental spiritual forces should we as modern culture be concerned with, conscious about, and aware of?
Wow.
The
First of all,
answer,
that is way more in depth than the prompts I use.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. When we use our intelligence with this intelligence, like, you know, I have, I mean, this is how long the answer is to that question. It broke it down. It broke it down. all the forces that we need to be
Okay,
aware about
so,
as humans.
okay.
Are you interested in any of them?
I mean, you
Or
seem to
here,
be reading, you seem to be going down the list. That's what it sounded like you were doing. Now that
all right,
I know.
here's some of the categories. Here's some metaphorical forces that go on in human development that we need to be thinking about, just as bullet points with
Are
much
they putting
in each of
forces in quotes? Are they putting them in quotes?
them.
No?
No.
Okay.
We have love and fear, the force of love and the force of fear. We have the force of curiosity and stagnation. We have the force of hope and despair. We have the force of ego versus authentic self. We have the force of trauma and resilience. Those are all the metaphorical forces that ChatGPT thought of as far as it relates to human development and
Let
how
me
we should
ask you
look.
something. Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
How many of those would you actually, like, could you actually attribute to a Jedi?
Well,
Development of as a Jedi. That's what I'm asking.
I mean, so in a real sense, in a real context, I'll be vulnerable, and I will say that I've done some personal healing, recently in my life. You know what I mean? And a lot of it is involved in exploring your traumas. You know what I mean? To not repeat traumas, uh, and to explore how they may have been getting in your way of some relationships in life. You know what I mean? So in that, like, yes, the force of trauma, like I have explored tapping into that force to try to better myself. You know what I mean? But let's move on to some actual societal forces. The stuff that's more we
You
can
haven't
grab on.
answered my question though.
Okay. Oh, well, go ahead. I'm sorry. How many? Well,
I
how many
want
of
to
these are
know
what?
that you can actually,
Oh, to a Jedi. Oh, to a Jedi. I
yes, to
mean,
the
a
development of
Jedi.
a Jedi.
A Jedi is always dealing with love and fear. I mean, Luke, I am your father. Like a Jedi is always dealing with a conflict of love and fear. You know what I mean? Curiosity and stagnation. A Jedi always has to make that decision. Is he going to tap into his forces? You know what I mean? Or is he going to stay dormant? You know what I mean? Hope and despair, the dark side of the force, the good side of the force. You know what I mean? There's two sides you can tap into with the force. You know what I mean? These forces are, we have choices with all these forces. When you talk about the ego versus the authentic self, you have to talk about the part of you that like seeks validation from the world and the part of you that just really actually is in the world. You know what I mean? The two different parts of that. So like, yeah, the Jedi thing, but again, let's move on to some actual societal forces that we should be. These are real world influences that impact our emotional, psychological, and physical development.
Hmm.
Technology and media. We're talking about algorithms that shape thought, attention, and values. We're talking about constant stimulation that can erode inner stillness and reflection. We have the force of capitalism and consumer culture, which teaches identity through possessions and often distracts from deeper purpose and values. We have education and indoctrination versus indoctrination, which can empower or limit depending on how it is structured. You know what I mean? We're, access, inequality and power structures. We have the structural racism, patriarchies, like powerful forces, like, you know, stuff like that. Like we can't like deny like those forces, how they impact us psychologically. Climate and environmental crisis. We're talking about the heat wave. We're burning up here in Pennsylvania. This is the hottest day today in 15 years. We had some of the most violent storms come through here just 2 days ago and take down trees that have been up for 150 years, many of them in our area. Mother Nature is very unpredictable, and the unpredictable nature is becoming more frequent if you're paying attention. So, yes, climate and environmental stuff is always going on. and globalization and displacement. You know what I mean? Those are just some real life, actual things, the forces that go on in our life that, you know, we should be aware of. Thoughts?
Well, my first thought is that I didn't understand. I didn't expect it to be that in depth.
Oh, well, I'm deep. See, I don't see. I had this third eye. You know what I mean? And what
No,
it is?
no. I mean, I'm just saying, even the length of what you showed me that Chat GBT brought back, it's like that's really deep.
And it's still not done. We still have spiritual, mental, and metaphysical, and then we have stuff that modern cultures just be for, you know. And then we have a final thought. Go ahead.
Well, that's just it. I don't really. I guess I'm still taking it in because I really don't know
All right.
how to
Okay.
phrase
All
how I
right.
feel about it. I just
It's this is some revolutionary stuff we're talking about here. You know what I mean? Like, all right, so you know, I know you're not a spiritual person. I really am. You know, these things are often harder to quantify, but deeply felt and widely studied in philosophy, psychology, and spiritual traditions. Uh, One thing to think about is a collective unconscious. You know, sometimes people talk about an inherent psychic layer of shared amongst all human emotions. Uh, we have ancestral memories and the concept of intergenerational trauma. You mean the fact that like they now can identify that, like, you know, behavior does travel like generation to generation. You know what I mean? If you pay attention, you know what I mean? Like they've studied it. Um, Time and morality, just like, you know, the awareness of death versus life. And just being mindful, even like the shit I'm talking about now, just even like having the presence to even think, or awareness to even think about these things. And then more of a religious thing, grace, forgiveness, and compassion. I would
sounds
definitely
like
highlight that.
Buddhism to me.
Yeah, that force I would definitely highlight, as if you're doing any work on trying to improve yourself, you should definitely love yourself, and that definitely often involves giving yourself grace, forgiveness, and compassion. You know, like, and really participating in that. You know what I mean? So yeah, like that is a force. You know, that these are spiritual forces that I feel like, you know, even if you don't go to the mosque or go to, you know, or believe in Jesus, that, like, you know, you might want to think about some forces going on in your life. We have the force of distraction, the force of disconnection, the force of systems, the force of choice and free will. So yeah, as a final thought, the force, as described by Obi-Wan Kenobi, an energy field created by all living things, it surrounds us and penetrates us, and is more than fiction. It reflects a longing in us for a unifying field, something that helps us understand that we're not isolated. Whether you call it love, presence, God, the Tao, or consciousness, the most important thing is that we engage it with deliberity. I've never heard deliberately said that, like, but we should deliberately, yes, engage in these forces. Uh, and then it asked me if I wanted a visual or symbolic breakdown of these forces, and that's where I stopped the conversation. I was satisfied at that point. So yeah, guys, the force is strong with me, and you know what I mean. I hold my lightsaber every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have to admit, for the first time in a minute, I'm kind of taken aback. All I can really do is just take that in.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I never gave it enough thought to even think it could be like broken down that way. But it all makes sense. It
yeah.
all makes sense.
We talk
I
to
can
our
say that.
ancestors. You know what I mean? We talk to our ancestors. Like that's a force. You know what I mean? Like some people do. Like like there's so many. All mentioned. There's a lot to. Yeah, it's a lot to digest. You know what I mean? I'm glad I saved the search. You know what I mean? May the force be with you.
So it's funny because I also did a little deep dive, and this was like hours ago. Um, I'll admit, I've never quite understood the concept of lexicon. And so when, I don't know, for some reason that thought had crossed my mind. And so I consulted the scrolls, and it's, it made me realize that it's like I understood it in a base sense, but I thought that it applied to more than just language. But it really, the concept really only applies to language. But the idea is that
But what
lexicon
is
is basic.
what is
Yeah, like
lexicon?
a lexicon is like a complete set. All right. In the course of like language, because that's what they talk about. It would be the entire vocabulary of a language, all the
Okay.
words, the meanings, how the words relate to each other, everything about the language,
Okay.
the full scope of that language. But that idea is also broken down into other areas. So like the ones that it came back for me are outside of, all right, so we just talked about in linguistics, but it says in the mind, for an individual, their lexicon is the complete set of words and things that they use during the scope of their life. You know what I mean? So like for
So
you, it's like,
each language has their own lexicon.
no, see, that's what the thing, like a lexicon isn't really, it's not a necessarily like, it's more just the idea behind it. The
So
answer
it
is yes,
crosses.
but
It cross. It
it's not
crosses.
because it's not rules. It's just the idea that for every language, like every language has its own vocabulary.
It takes into consideration things like slang. It's not just the dictionary
It's
part of the
everything. Yeah,
language.
it's everything about it.
Yeah.
That's the idea. It's like the entire.
Yeah.
It would be like, all right, in terms of science, it would be like the equivalent of the known visible universe.
All right. So let me ask you this. So let's see if I understand it. So like, if we're talking about Saint Lucia, a place on Earth, and we're talking about the lexicon of Saint Lucia, we're talking about everything that has to relate with everything that's ever been spoken or written on that language and how it's been done. Yes?
Not
From like
necessarily. It's whatever language is used there. It's the complete scope of that language.
right. So each language right. So each language has its own
I'm saying,
yeah,
but yeah, but it's not. But I don't want you to think like
like
it's not
Spanish.
like a concrete kind of rule where
I understand that part.
something can exist
That is
without. Yeah, it's just the idea of its
yeah,
totality. That's
yeah.
basically what I'm saying.
I understand that
Um,
part. Yeah.
and like I said at the time, like I thought I understood that because I had never actually looked up the word. I've always been able to kind of like derive a basic understanding of a word from its use in the language, because when you take Latin, you just kind of learn that inherently. So that's why they say like if you know Latin, you could pretty much decipher any other Western language because it's all based on that to a degree. But what I'm saying is, it's like you can always, like, you don't, if you pay attention to how something is said, you can always derive its general understanding. You might not know the definition, the dictionary definition, but you can understand what's being said to you. Anyway, because I'm kind of rambling. Going back to this thing about the lexicon. So the next one that they talked about that I thought was interesting was in computing. And so they say a lexicon might refer to a database of words, each word having additional information attached that associated with that word. And the last one that it gave was in specialized fields. So for example, your career, it would be, I guess, the totality of all of the terms, medical terms, every word that is used in the scope of your profession and what they mean and how they relate to your profession and how people in your profession use them on any given day.
Yeah. So
Now,
let me put a pin in that for 1 second. So I think that makes me think of something like texting lexicon and how texting lexicon may vary depending on generation.
that's
You know what I mean?
true, but in a sense, no, because it's confined to.
Oh, it would take that in consideration. It would take that.
No, I'm saying, but yeah, the idea of the lexicon in this situation is that it is still confined to the devices that are used. And there's only a limited amount of things. You have words and you have emojis. Now, the definitions of those emojis may change, and the definition of words used could possibly change, because I've seen that where, like, slang, the definition of certain slang words kind of changed over the years throughout generations. But yeah, like there's always still like a confine. It's not ever expanding.
Bro, think about something with slang, because we've talked about like having discussions about slang before, like, and yeah, like you said, like the evolution of it. Just think about like something simple as something being cool or hot, just culturally. Like, you know what I mean? How, we're talking about two opposite things that can mean the same thing, in, further exploration of the lexicon. You know what I mean? Like, that's
No,
all the
yeah,
time.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but the
he was
word.
cold. That boy's cold. He cold. He cold. He
I
hot.
mean, just for the scope of this conversation, the only way like a lexicon can ever truly expand is if new words are created, like brand new words. Now, that's kind of happened slang wise, but it doesn't really happen at a rate, at least I don't think, that has any real effect on the lexicon. You know what I mean?
We get a couple words every year. Webster adds like probably like 5 words at least, every year to Webster's.
Now,
like, for example,
let me
like
ask you.
just think about DM. Like, there was a time when DM was not in Webster's. It's probably in Webster's now. Like, for example.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the relevance of the Urban Dictionary as
I
it
love it.
relates to language, like
It's
modern
totally
language?
that's totally part of lexicon, definitely, and relevant and diverse and yeah, local, often culturally local. You know what I mean? Like, slang. You know what I mean? As much as we are one culture, we are often many villages. You know what I mean? But yes, like our version of our some traditions are still always happening, yeah, but they come out a little bit differently, just like religion, just different ways of communicating. Bombs over Baghdad. Bombs over Baghdad. That was from our generation, man. I remember when bombs were dropping on Baghdad. You know what I mean? And today they're dropping in Iran. You know what I mean? So bombs over Baghdad.
Yeah.
But yeah, we
Um,
appreciate checking in with y'all. For sure, for certain. Your beard looks great.
oh my God. Oh, you just reminded me of something though. Oddly enough, which is weird that it made me think of this, but my coworker or one of the bud tenders, I realized recently that he is like he's a MAGA. He's a MAGA dude, like
Mm-hmm.
on the low.
Yeah.
And so and I wasn't even thinking about that at the time when I showed him this, but I had just watched this video on Instagram of how it was an old video where Trump was basically saying how he wasn't gonna, he was gonna be the one to bring peace, and he was gonna stop the wars and all of this, and he wasn't gonna like,
Yeah.
bump, but it turns out he did exactly that. So the video, I guess the joke of the video was that the guy said like, yeah, this is the first time I ever had to agree with Trump. You know what I mean? Like, and so I came out, I was in the break room when I saw this. So when I came out of the break room, I saw him and I brought the student's attention. I had mentioned it. Man, when I tell you this dude got offended, but it was like,
He didn't want to let you know how offended he was.
yes, exactly. And then, he was trying to like excuse himself out of the conversation. I was like, where you going? Like, like how you gonna run? Like, oh man. So then like later, right?
Is he our age? Is he an X generation guy? Because that leads me somewhere else. Is he an older
I
guy?
don't think so. I think he might be, what's the one just under his Y? Is that
Yeah.
yeah, I think he
They got a
might be
vibe.
Y.
Okay. Yeah.
But I
People who
mean,
are
it
like
was just
30,
so
30.
funny that because I really wanted to ask him, like, because what I never see any of them do is actually like intelligently plead their case about their support for him. And I thought like he would actually be able to do that. But he gave me a traditional cognitive dissonance response. And now I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And I'm gonna have fun fucking with him.
Mm-mm-mm. It's funny you say that. My friend Bill, fellow therapist, was talking about a patient that just was so ignorant and blatant with his, he said some very, you know, offensive things about Obama that like, and it was the one time he was trying to
You mean
hold
like
back from
recently?
like, no, this happened
Oh.
within the past couple of years. And he had to discharge the dude just based upon that. He's like, nah, like I'm not gonna like what he's like, nah. So yeah, like you gotta have boundaries in life. You know what I mean? And yeah, like and this country is polarized. Half of the country supports what's going on, will blindly follow him, and half of the
That's the
country.
part that I took off of. It's like I just keep hearing, and of course, like I said, he gave me all the typical responses you would expect, and they're not even responses. It's just like the deflections. They always try to deflect it onto Biden, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? Like they always just try to deflect it on the Biden. Like this dude was just going around, just strong arming leaders into doing what he wants. No, we're seeing that right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, how are you gonna like? And then the thing was like, it was almost like he tried to be dismissive with me. That's why I'm a fuck with him, because you tried to be dismissive with me, like you were taking a high road or something. Like, no, dude.
But like, this is we shouldn't be surprised with this level
I'm not
of
surprised.
confusion and
I'm not at
ignorance
all.
because these are the same people who think Snoop Dogg is the greatest rapper ever.
Actually, on that note, I'm just done. I don't really have anything else to say. Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone. Yeah,
Thanks for coming out. God bless. Good night.